Hello everyone and welcome to Women of Grace. I'm Johnnette Benkovic. When expectant parents receive the news that their little one will be born with a serious birth defect, the ever-growing majority of them are choosing abortion. And if the prenatal testing shows the child has Down syndrome, a full 90% of parents choose to take the life of their child before he or she is born. Today's guest knows these statistics well. He is an advocate for children with disabilities and the father of Chloe, an amazing little girl who is happy her parents chose life.
We are women of grace round the throne of the Lord Most High. And we lift up our praise from the depths of our souls here at Christ.
Writes this in an article on his blog. Having a child with a disability allows you to quickly discover the true heart and core of people. And Chloe and all children with disabilities are a wake-up call to a world obsessed with perfection, instant gratification, and self. He continues, at age 7, Chloe has positively impacted more people than most individuals do in a lifetime. As a family, he writes, we meet with new and expecting parents of children with Down syndrome to congratulate them and show them the goodness that is waiting for them. There are many challenges and valleys to navigate when blessed with a child with a disability, but the rewards are priceless when you are able to disconnect from this frenzied world and see the glimpse of heaven these children offer. Beautiful words, a beautiful testimony. Let's meet Kondrich, a tireless advocate for those with Down syndrome and an early intervention specialist. Kurt, welcome to Women of Grace. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Johnnette. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're so very welcome. You know, when I had the opportunity to look at your blog and to find out about Chloe and the amazing job that you are doing on behalf of all children with disabilities, but especially those who have Down syndrome, I just knew we had to get you here on the set. So I am just so glad you could be with us today. You know, I think it must be relatively shocking news when a mom and a dad first hear that their children or their child may have Down syndrome. And many today are opting for prenatal testing. You and your lovely wife did not do that, though, did you?
No, we didn't at all. We actually had named Chloe when my wife was pregnant with her. We didn't know we were having a little girl, but we had no prenatal testing, and we were eagerly anticipating her arrival in the world.
Yeah, and when Chloe was delivered, you know, according to what I've read on your blog, the doctor didn't seem as thrilled about all of this as you, and you were just overjoyed to greet this new life.
She had aspirated during her delivery into the world, and they were working on her, and I could hear her crying, and I knew that was a good sign because actually in my former career as a police officer, I delivered a baby, so I knew that crying was a good thing. So I kept asking, is Chloe okay? And he was like, yeah, she's okay. And finally he walked over to us with his mask on and said, your daughter has characteristics of Down syndrome, which I didn't know much about, but I immediately said, well, can I hold my daughter? And he seemed kind of surprised at first. I wanted to hold her, and he goes, oh, you want to hold her? I said, yes, I want to hold my daughter. And he brought her over, and she's from day one was a beautiful little girl and continues to be a beautiful little girl.
Yes, she is indeed, and we have her pictures here on the set. We're happy to have her with us, even by picture here. And you know, I think that you have had an amazing story in your own life, amazing developments as a result of this gift of life that's been given to you. And you were a police officer for 20 years and decided to make a change in career.
Yes, after Chloe's birth, we started learning about Down syndrome, the different things we had to do, the different interventions, and I knew that God was pushing me in a different direction, and I knew that it was time to make a career change and to do something that would really advocate and get the word out on what these children are, what a priceless blessing they are. So after Chloe's birth, I kind of took a leap of faith. Some doors started opening for me, and I say it was strictly God opening this path, and I went back to school at the University of Pittsburgh, received my master's degree in early intervention, and from that time I worked for an agency, early intervention specialist, and I advocate for these children, making sure parents know how important and how priceless they are, and making sure they have the services that they need. And I go to the state capitol, I go to meet legislators, I go to wherever the good Lord sends me to let people see that these children are a treasured blessing and that we need more children like this. And it was during that time when I became aware of this 90% plus abortion statistic for these children, and that kind of put me to another level of just defending, as I say, my mission is the same as a police officer, defend and protect, defending their very existence and making sure that this society welcomes them as valued and priceless members of society.
You know, the statistic that I read in the open, the one that you just quote now again, is a startling statistic. And I don't think that the majority of people realize that 90+% of children that are diagnosed with Down syndrome or prenatally screened for Down syndrome are killed in the wombs of their mothers. And so we see a diminishing population.
Absolutely.
And it's upsetting because these children are priceless. And you know, I know that you see this every day, Kurt, and you're a blessed man. You have a glimpse of heaven in your home every single day. And you know, you look at the innocence in this child, this as far as I'm concerned, it's a glimpse into what it must have been like in the Garden of Eden before the fall of man, because you see absolutely no guile in children with Down syndrome, and their hearts are as big as the universe. They welcome you in. There's no prejudice or bias in them, and they teach us so very much, and their quality of life can be quite good, and you advocate for that. I'd like to hear a little bit about what early intervention has been able to procure for children with Down, and I'm thinking that, you know, so many people might be watching today that might receive a diagnosis like this. You and your wife work on behalf of these children and talk to numbers of individuals who are prenatally screened for Down and tell them about the beautiful gift that is awaiting them.
Well, what's amazing is, excuse me, when you think that I was born in 1963, if Chloe had been born in 1963, she'd have been labeled uneducable, probably called a mongoloid, sent up the river to an institution, and been excluded from society. But because of these services, early intervention and inclusion, you know, Chloe at age 3 was actually reading. We had a bunch of therapists come into our house and work. They were just some of the most awesome, beautiful people you'd ever meet. And what a lot of parents don't know is 85% of brain development occurs in those first 5 years of life, which is a beautiful thing in and of itself. And during that time, if you have people in there stimulating and working with that child and putting a foundation down, as I say, then the results are amazing, and it launches that child into a lifetime of success. So we were very blessed to have a team of early intervention therapists who, you know, occupational therapy and speech therapy and other developmental therapy that were able to just not only get Chloe going, but also to let our family, I tell you, when we were in a valley, to see the mountaintop and to see the light and to see I don't even talk about disabilities anymore. I talk about abilities. So my child has Down syndrome, but my child is not Down syndrome. My child has an extra chromosome, and I often tell people you should wish your child had an extra chromosome. And by putting that foundation down, Chloe, as of right now, she's 7 years old. She's in 2nd grade in her neighborhood school. She's reading at a 2nd grade level. She interacts very well with people, eats lunch with her classmates, is in class with them, and does school projects, and is just a very valued member of the community. And the kids in her class, I don't think they see Chloe as the kid with Down syndrome. They see Chloe as one of the little girls who attends Eisenhower Elementary School.
Yeah, well, and Chloe has met some very famous people, by the way. She has been able to affect quite an impact in the lives of very many people, and the individuals that she's met just kind of span the world of politics.
They do.
Tell us a little bit about her meeting Sarah Palin as well as the McCains.
Well, when Sarah Palin became a candidate for vice president during the election in 2008, one of her first stops was in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania. So we decided, and what drew us to Sarah Palin was that she had recently just had a son with Down syndrome. So we decided we were going to drive down there, and we took Chloe and our son Nolan, he's just an awesome child also, and went down to Washington County to hopefully get a glimpse of Sarah and let her see. And it was my beautiful wife during the time down there. We didn't have a political sign. She made a sign on the way down that says, "We love kids with Down syndrome." And I say she did that because I really believe she was a mother calling out to another mother, "Hey, listen, we love your child. Here's our child. We want to show you what a blessing these children are." So we went to this political event, thousands and thousands of people, and when the bus came in, my wife was able to be in a position to show the sign and let Chloe wave. You could see Sarah on the bus, and you could see her really, she was taken by this little kid waving to her and this and that. And so during the rally, these Secret Service agents came over and said, we need you to come with us. And I was starting to wonder if I'd done something or whatever, but they took us over and I said, Sarah and John McCain would like to meet you. And we had the opportunity to stand with them, and John McCain showed my son the bus, and they brought little Trig off the bus, and Chloe immediately walked over and she kissed him on the head and said how cute he was, and she hugged Sarah Palin, and I could see she was completely taken by it. And I told her, we didn't talk politics. I said, your son can do this someday. Your son's is a valued member of the community. He's gonna talk, he's gonna walk, he's gonna give hugs, he's gonna be, just like I said, a light in this world. And it was a magical moment because there were no politics. It was strictly two families with a child with Down syndrome connecting, and one family showing the other family that this is a positive experience. This is something that you're going to cherish and be excited about. And it really made a tremendous impact, I think, on her at the time as a new mother, not as a candidate.
When you and your wife have the opportunity to talk to parents who are expecting a child who has been prenatally diagnosed or screened for Down syndrome, or if they've given birth to a child recently, what are some of the biggest concerns that they have, and how do you and your wife respond to those?
Well, the biggest concerns are, what's my child going to do? How is my child going to fit into society? Will my child go to school? Is my child going to read? What are the kids going to think? And really the best antidote for that to begin with is we'll take Chloe to meet them. I had a police officer friend whose wife became pregnant, and they found out they were having a child with Down syndrome. And we took Chloe over, and Chloe interacted, and she was so excited after meeting Chloe and hearing the stories and seeing the abilities. She actually went to the buddy walk while still pregnant with this unborn child to show her support for children with Down syndrome. So our message is really that, like I said, that this child is no less a valued member of society, that this child is a perfect child, that this child is welcomed here, that this child's a gift. I tell some people, I often say to the Lord, I wonder how lucky I was to receive a gift like Chloe and to receive a child like her. And not only that, a lot of these families have other siblings, and I say that child's going to make her brothers and sisters a better person. My son Nolan is a better man because of his sister, and he's growing up to be the type of man that I've always prayed for, because he has a focus on what's important in life, what really matters in life, and his sister Chloe has taught him that, and it's a magical thing to watch. So it's the visual, and it's showing them and hooking them into early intervention services, and letting them know that yes, your child's going to go to school, your child's going to work, your child's going to have fun, go to the beach, play, hang out, and just do everything that other kids do. Go to a Pirate game.
Go to a Pirate game.
Go to a Pirate game.
The man is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Right.
my hometown. We've already had that discussion. Right. It's great to have you here, Kurt. When we come back, more with our guest, Kurt Kondrich, and Father Edmund Sylvia will be with us, so stay tuned. Welcome back, friends. We're visiting with our guest today, Kurt Kondrich. Father Ed Sylvia has joined us on the set. As you know, Father is our theological advisor. He is our chaplain. He is our co-host, all-around great priest. Father, welcome to the set today. Fascinating interview, and one that I think is so very important. And the statistic that we quoted at the beginning of the show, and that Kurt mentioned as we went through the first part of the program, that 90+% of babies that are prenatally screened for Down syndrome are aborted in the womb. And this is a tragedy. It's a travesty, and it's a tragedy.
That hardly begins to describe it. I mean, it really is an act of eugenics. And the church, of course, not only stands wholeheartedly with those who face these difficulties, but as you know, it takes family, extended family, to be able to assist and welcome and play the part that, of course, they're intended to play. And in our society riddled with individualism and ships passing in the night, calling that family, these opportunities, again, remind us of, as Kurt said, what matters most.
Well, and I couldn't help but think about your family experience because, Kurt, when you talked about you were born in 1963, and if Chloe had been born in 1963, the response to her would have been entirely different than the response is now in terms of services available to her and the way in which the inclusivity of helping her to become a part of all that God intends for her to be a part of were simply not there in 63, and that was the situation with your brother David, Father.
Exactly. My brother David was born in 1963.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
My parents were told not to even bring him home. Again, the term mongoloid was used, and that he would have no life, and our family should just move on. And of course my parents would hear none of that. My brother never learned to walk, never talked. He died at 4, very susceptible to ordinary childhood diseases, really. There was never any therapy, nothing offered. So my parents knew the most important thing was that he be loved. And he really was the most important gift to our family, no question about it. I was the oldest, so I had the privilege of being his godfather. But awesome. Like I said, I can look back and I often say my vocation to the priesthood was probably responsible because my godson was praying me into it.
Yeah, you both mentioned the giftedness of your experience and the way in which God's blessed you through it. How do you see Chloe blessing your family? How does she teach her brother Nolan to be this man that you describe him to be?
Well, we live in a society like it's obsessed with perfection. I mean, you hear so many people, they want their child to be a sports star and a movie star and all these things, and that's not what I want for either one of my children. I want my children to be good Christian people who have Jesus Christ at the center of their life, at their heart, and who are focused on that in every aspect of their life. And it's funny, I talk to people about that, and people give me strange looks, and I say, well, that's fine. I mean, that's what I want for my children. So along comes Chloe, and here's my son, who's growing up in a world where young men are just given all the wrong messages about marriage, about family, about sexuality, and here's a little girl who's his sister, who he adores, who is absolutely pure, is innocent, who gives unconditional love, who every time she sees him, it's like he's returned from the war. She's so happy to see him, and she lights up his life. And Nolan volunteers to work during her summer camp program. Nolan, we were on a Special Olympics cruise just last week, and he's playing Wii with another young man who had Down syndrome. It's a natural way to him now. He has a natural heart for the most vulnerable members of society. He has a pure love. He knows that love is not about looks, it's about what's inside of a person. And that, to me, as a father, it's a priceless gift. It's a beautiful thing to watch him grow and have this incorporated as just the way of life, the way he does things.
You mentioned, and both of you used the term eugenics, and I think that we have to have this discussion. We've got to talk about the fact that this decision to eradicate the disease of Down syndrome is a eugenic movement that has taken root and hold, unfortunately, in the minds and hearts of many of our politicians, as well as in the minds and hearts of many healthcare professionals. And I want to talk about this for a moment, because the screening is getting ever increasingly easier, less complex, and less threatening in a variety of ways.
There's a non-invasive test to screen for Down syndrome is coming out in the not too distant future, and it's being recommended that all women have it, regardless of age, so that they can make the appropriate decision. And my
laden language, charged language.
And my mission is to make the appropriate decision of accepting this child as a precious gift. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, but it is eugenics. I mean, what they're doing is they are identifying these children in the womb, they are targeting them, and then they're eliminating them. And I tell people, I said, if a truck drove around town and picked up people with Down syndrome and took them off the smokestacks in the distance, there'd be such a fury and an outcry, this and that. And I've said this to people, and I said, it's exactly what's happening. It's a silent eugenic movement. I said, and we talk about 1963, the children were allowed to arrive here. Now, they weren't included. They might have been called things, but I said, at least they were allowed to be born. Now we say we champion inclusion and these people, but how can we say as a society we champion inclusion and embrace people with disabilities when prenatally we're eliminating them to the point that they could actually be on the endangered species list?
Yeah, there's a schizophrenia abreast in the culture with regard to this, because you are absolutely right. The eugenic movement, of course, includes this Down syndrome, but it also includes other disabilities. Let's eradicate